This is a video review for a quiz on run-ons, fragments, and combining sentences. First up, run-ons. People have been known to describe a sentence as a run-on if it is too long, but technically that's not true. There are only two types of run-ons that we look at in this class: a comma splice and a fused sentence. So consider the following sentences. John ran to the store, Jill walked to the mall. A comma splice would connect these two independent clauses with a comma alone, missing the conjunction. And a fused sentence would join these two complete sentences with no punctuation at all. Both of those are incorrect, and they are considered run-on sentences. Just to review, every complete sentence must have three things: a subject, a verb, and express a complete thought. Fragments are created when a sentence is missing one or more of those three. So let's look at three common examples. First up, because the sky was blue that day. So we have the sky was, we have a subject, we have a verb, but we have this subordinating conjunction because, making this a dependent clause. Therefore, it does not express a complete thought. It's missing a main clause. Example 2, a verbal warning stating what the student had said in class. Other than the AL, it's also missing a verb. Here, stating cannot be the main verb. The ing is the participle form, and here it's used as a noun or a gerund. Example 3, meeting a year's NWEA growth, and this whole thing, which requires a different increase depending on where a student starts, is describing growth. It's a relative clause. So we have meeting a year's growth, and we're missing a verb. It's hard to see that because there's this much longer relative clause after. So then the combining sentences piece, well, two independent clauses can be joined in a couple different ways. We can just put a period between the two. We can use a semicolon. We can have a comma conjunction, one of the fanboys, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. In rare cases, we can use a colon if the second clause is more specific than the first, or if it explains what came before. We can also just turn one of those independent clauses into a dependent clause by adding a subordinating conjunction, for example. Similarly, we can turn one of the independent clauses into a phrase, whether that's a modifier phrase, a prepositional phrase, a couple different options. So let's go through the original version of the quiz on run-ons, fragments, and combining sentences. Number 1, has a subject and verb and expresses a complete thought. That is an independent clause. Expressing the complete thought is the key difference, because this one does not express a complete thought, which makes it a dependent clause. So 3 and 4, we have a phrase punctuated like a sentence, even though it does not express a complete thought. That would be a fragment. And created by a comma splice or a fused sentence. That would be a run-on. Number 5, joining two complete sentences cannot be done by using a period checks out, a comma conjunction checks out, a semicolon checks out, but trying to say comma, however, comma to join two independent clauses is not correct. And defining or identifying the noun that comes before them, that's the definition of a relative clause, not a Santa Claus. Which, by the way, out of 96 responses, one person did choose Santa Claus. Number 7, blank his determination and tenacity, our great country would not be the same as it is today. Without is the correct answer. So that takes away both the subject and the verb and just turns it into a phrase. Number 8, blank in Scotland on January 11th, 1815, John immigrated to the new country with his parents at a very young age. Born was correct. If we start to add in a subject or an unnecessary comma, we run into problems because we would need more than just this comma here. As written, this whole phrase can describe John. Number 9, he soon began working under a local lawyer in Kingston, comma, his mentor died before he could complete his apprenticeship. So we have two complete sentences joined by a comma alone, that's a splice. If we choose D, it adds that conjunction, correctly joining two complete sentences. Number 10, young MacDonald was not quite old enough to take over the practice, comma, however, comma. This didn't stop the ambitious young lad. So we have this conjunctive adverb with two commas, which is not done correctly. The semicolon in front of it is the better choice. Because these conjunctive adverbs are not full-blown conjunctions, they try to get the job done, but they require either a semicolon or a period, rather than just the comma, like the fanboys. Number 11, blank several high-profile cases, comma, John quickly became a prominent figure in legal venues. C is the best choice. We don't want to have he as a subject. We don't need this extra comma after. Number 12, this notoriety prompted the young man to run for a legislative seat in the House of Commons, comma, he won in 1844. So this comma, joining together two complete sentences, is a splice. If we change that and get rid of he, won in 1844 does not correctly describe what came before. D is the best choice, turning this into a relative clause with the pronoun which. In the fragments section, to ensure that the kids were busy and engaged, the restaurant had many activities besides bowling. D was the best choice here, just a comma, because to ensure is the beginning of this modifier phrase. It's a dependent clause. It's missing a verb, as is. 14 is one that many students got wrong. 1, air hockey, which involves two players with pushers and one puck. A lot of people incorrectly thought C, 1 being air hockey, which involves, and 1 being, the problem with that is it's not an actual subject, and air hockey is just describing it. The best answer is actually B. It has the verb. None of the others do, because this whole thing is a relative clause. So if you ignore that, where's the verb? It's right there, B. 15, as the clock ticks down, players shooting basketballs as fast as they can into the basket. You might have noticed we're missing a verb. D replaces that participle, shooting, with the main verb, shoot. 16, when the night was over, my 3 kids, who finding it difficult to leave the party behind. We're again missing a verb, finding, and who is the relative pronoun. So instead, getting rid of that comma also, and just using a main verb, found. Because when is already a dependent clause, this one needs to be the main clause. 17, in 1986, he enrolled at Madrid's Círculo de Artes, which was one of the leading art schools in Spain. So this, as written, is a relative clause. We just need a comma rather than a period. 18, although no particular degree or program of study is required to become a website designer, many designers holding undergraduate or graduate degrees in artistic fields such as graphic design or in technical fields such as computer science, where's the actual verb? So we have designers, and then we have all these descriptions of designers, but we never actually have a verb. That's why B is the best answer. We maintain that the right tense, and it's a main verb. 19, Jane had originally intended to completely wash her large aquarium by hand, comma, but she. Just the period here would kind of work, but is a better choice because it shows the relationship between the two. 20, she loves celebrating her birthday, so she always has a big party. Same idea as the previous. We want to show the relationship between the sentences. 21, true narcolepsy is the sudden and irresistible onset of sleep during waking hours, and it is extremely dangerous. We don't need to repeat true narcolepsy. We can use the pronoun it, and that way we still have 2 complete sentences joined by a coordinating conjunction. So number 24 came down to either C or B, depending on if you wanted to use which, the relative pronoun, to say that this whole clause is describing the performances, or C if you wanted to say so long, in fact, that her regular clients have... So in that case, we're describing how long the speeches were. The relative pronoun has to describe the nearest noun. C was the better choice for that reason. 23, watching a TV show is a passive behavior, comma, but, showing the contrast, it was C. 24, the online retailer Amazon has completely changed how many consumers purchase goods. By making the whole online buying and selling experience trustworthy and easy. So we turn that into a prepositional phrase, by making, rather than starting fresh with the unnecessary pronoun. In 25, we see this follows, which we don't need. So a better way of combining those is just saying following, which means it's a phrase, you can use the comma, A is the best choice. For 26, C was the best choice, making that first one into a dependent clause. 27, A was the best choice, again turning one of the independent clauses into a dependent clause. In that case, the comma is okay. 28, my friends loved the restaurant, whereas I thought it was overpriced, showing the contrast between the two. B. 29, jojoba oil is made from the seeds of jojoba plants. And then we can say which instead of these plants. The relative clause describing the plants, avoiding the redundancy or unnecessary pronouns. Because if you have just the comma for they or no comma at all, then we are running in, well, we have run-ons. Because we have complete sentences joined by commas alone. 30 was C. Eliminating makes this a phrase rather than a standalone clause. So the comma alone is good.